If anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And I need two helpers to come forward. Al and
Keith.
Yes, thank you. Al, you be here, and Keith, you be here, and I'll stand behind you. Okay. Now, you can be the hitter, and you can be the hittee. And show us a right hook. No, that's not a right hook. Oh, right. Okay. Don't hurt him. Careful now. Don't hurt him. Okay. Now, what's wrong with that blow in terms of what the text is talking about? Anybody?
You're hitting him on his left cheek.
Left cheek. Jesus says right cheek, very explicitly. All right. So, okay, hit his right. Wait a minute.
That was really.
I'll show us a left hook. Now, what's wrong with that? It's the right cheek, right? Wrong arm. You can't use the left hand for any public action. It was used for unclean tasks. We were doing this in a great big tent in England, and I said, what's going on? And somebody from way back in the back said, "It's for wiping your arse!" Don't do that. So you can't use that at all. Now, then how with your right hand can you hit his right cheek? That's the only way possible to blow. The backhand. And the backhand is not for injuring people, but for humiliating people, for degrading them. Masters backhanded slaves, husbands, wives, parents, children, Romans, Jews. It's always one down, isn't it? It's always inserting person back in the social role he played as an inferior. The whole point was to force someone who was out of line to get back in line. Notice Jesus' audience here. If anyone strikes you, that's the kind of people Jesus was talking to, slaves. These are people who are used to being thus degraded. He is saying to them, refuse to accept this kind of treatment anymore. If they backhand you, turn the other cheek. Okay, get a little closer here. Backhand him. All right, and Keith, now you turn the other cheek. Hold it just a second. Now what are you going to do?
I have nothing to do. I don't know what to do.
His nose is in the way, isn't it? And anyway, it's like telling a joke twice. If it didn't work the first time, it won't work the second time either. The left cheek now offers a perfect target for a blow with a fist. But only equals fought with fists, as we know from Jewish sources. And the last thing the master wishes to do is to establish this underling's equality. Okay, thank you. This act of defiance renders the master incapable of asserting his dominance in this relationship. He can have the slave beaten, but he can intimidate him no longer. By turning the cheek, then, the inferior party is saying, I'm not inferior to you. I'm a human being. I refuse to be humiliated any longer. I am your equal. I'm a child of God.
Yes.
I won't take it anymore. Such defiance is no way to avoid trouble. Meek acquiescence is what the master wants. Such cheeky behavior it works better than in England. Such cheeky behavior may call down a flogging or worse, even a killing. But the point has been made. The powers that be have lost their power to make people submit. And when large numbers begin behaving thus, and Jesus was already depicted as addressing a crowd, you have a social revolution on your hands. In that world of honor and shaming, the superior has been rendered impotent to instill shame in a subordinate. He's been stripped of his power to dehumanize the other. As Gandhi taught, the first principle of nonviolent action is that of non-compliance with everything humiliating. How different this is from the usual view that this passage teaches us to turn the other cheek so our batterer can simply clobber us again. How often that interpretation has been fed to battered wives and children. And it was never what Jesus intended in the least. To such victims, he advises, stand up for yourselves. Take control of your responses. Don't answer the oppressor in kind, but find a new, third way that is neither cowardly submission nor violent reprisal. Jesus' second example of assertive nonviolence is set in a court of law. A creditor has taken a poor man to court over an unpaid loan. Only the poorest of the poor were subjected to such treatment. Deuteronomy 24 provided that a creditor could take as collateral for a loan a poor man's long outer robe, but it had to be returned each evening so that the poor person would have something in which to sleep. Jesus is not advising people to add to their disadvantage by renouncing justice altogether, as so many commentators have suggested. He is telling impoverished debtors who have nothing left but the clothes on their backs to use the system against itself. Indebtedness was a plague in first century Palestine. Jesus' parables are full of debtors struggling to salvage their lives. Heavy debt was not, however, a natural calamity that had overtaken the incompetent. It was the direct consequence of Roman imperial policy. Emperors taxed the wealthy heavily to fund their wars and bankroll the bureaucracy. The rich naturally sought non-liquid investments to hide their wealth. Land was best, but it was ancestrally owned, passed down over generations, and no peasant would voluntarily relinquish it. However, exorbitant interest of 25 to 250% could be used to drive landowners ever deeper into debt. And debt, coupled with the high taxation required to pay Roman tribute, created the economic leverage to pry Galilean peasants loose from their land. This sounds kind of familiar. By the time of Jesus, we see this process already far advanced. Large estates, owned by absentee landlords, managed by stewards, and worked by tenant farmers, day laborers, and slaves, many of whom had formerly been landowners. It's no accident that the very first act of Jewish revolutionaries in 66 AD, when the Roman War began, the first act was to burn the temple treasury where the record of debts was kept. Their own temple.